Welcome back to Tailored by Nature, where I discuss topics pertaining to nature, our true nurturer. Just want to kind of follow up with one of the experiences I had on TikTok this weekend. I was explaining to a gentleman. He was asking about names and what does this particular name mean. Um, I guess he was asking about the name Quran or something. What does it mean? And I didn't really get a chance to express to him that when we read names ancient, like in ancient texts, especially like in Hebrew when we see names in the Bible, because the Bible was translated from Aramaic into the English language. So I explained to him that when we see names and such like that, these names, we cannot treat them like how we treat words in English. In English, like a name is considered like a proper noun, and in the Aramaic, names function as adjectives and verbs. So it's a different it's a different understanding and concept of how we view things and how things function in the ancient world, or in the language that they used back then, in the Aramaic language or Western Shemitic language, because the language creates images of itself by mirroring functions in nature. So the language is dependent on nature. So it's a totally different way of looking at the world. They look at the world in a biological, natural sense. And one of the words that we use today, or people still use, which are like breadcrumbs, which our ancestors left to that is still relevant because of what they were going through. And one of those words, for instance, is the word kumbaya. People see the word kumbaya and they don't consider what it is. The word kumbaya is an Aramaic word, and most people look at it as like kumbaya. They have different meaning for it. But in the Aramaic, it actually, the letters within the word um, is from the Aramaic. It's from the, I guess, the lettering system within the Aramaic language. Just like we have alphabet within the Aramaic language, they have lettering system, and the lettering system within the Aramaic language actually represent those words. So when, like I said, when they put names or together, back in the past, they literally sit down and put letters together for the purpose of creating a narrative, not just arbitrary words or names, but these words create a narrative. And I guess that one of the narrative we have, like within the word kumbaya, is when you break it down, it was tell the narrative of what the people was going through and what they was asking for. So when you see the first letter C, the which means to surround with a wall of protection. Where do we see that word? We see that word in the word, in the English they say Enoch, but its name is pronounced Canuck. We see it in the bosom of Abraham. Um, so, so the word Ka, or Canuck, it means to surround and protection. We also see the Ka in the word copper, and within the word, and melanin is made up of copper. So it's a wall of protection, which is like melanin, which protects us from the sun. So when we look at um, the affords the definition of things, like I said, the definition within the American English language derived from the Western Shemitic language, which was what our ancestors spoke here in the Americas. So that, like I said, the definitions come from nature itself. So he has a root to the definition. It does that we have gotten away from nature. So a lot of the words that we use, we don't really connect them back to nature. So in the word kumbaya, we see the word letter C, which means to surround with a wall of protection. And like I expressed, we see that letter in the word Kanak. The letter U, like W mean, which is pronounced U, it means swift action. So that's why they put the letter there. U means swift action. The letter M, as in Amma, in Hebrew, it means to come down, and and one of the ways that we know it means to come down or liquid that comes down is that the female Adam wife's name was named Amma, and part of a woman cycle is that water comes down every month. Her water comes down, or her liquid and our period comes down. Water comes down. When she give birth, the water comes down. When she have a period, water comes down. So it's actually everything is tied back to nature. We see the word be means to put us in a place of covering or protection. That's what ba stands for. It's pronounced ba. And we see the word I. Actively see what's happening to us. So the word I or AI is pronounced I, or is written as AI. It means the mind to actively see in the Aramaic language. And then we see the last part, which is Yah, which is your right hand, protect us. So when we see the word Kumbaya, it's actually speaking a narrative to what our ancestors asked our Creator to do, is to protect us from our enemy. So the first letter is Ka. In English they say C, but in our language it's Ka. And then we see U, and then we see the letter M. In English they say M. In Aramaic is Ama, or Ma, or you could pronounce Ma or Ama. And then we see the letter B. In English they say B, but it's Ba. In Aramaic it's pronounced Ba. And then we see the letter I, which, like I said, in Aramaic is written as AI. And then we see the letter Y, which is pronounced Ya in the Aramaic. And then we see the letter A in English, which is pronounced Ah in Aramaic. Like I said, the system and letters that we use, it goes back to nature, and the sounds that we make actually carry frequencies within nature. So what has happened over a period of time is that language is sound shifting. So what they did, they took us from a natural sound to a different sound, and most of the time the sound is in reverse, and it creates like negative flow within the earth. Like the words we use, they tend to be negative in English, because in English it's opposes, or it's the furthest we have been away from nature or natural law, because the language itself opposes natural law. Like I said, one of the reasons why they went to the English language is so that they could control their definition of words, their meaning of things. So, like I said, they create their own narrative. And it's kind of like, I call it artificial, I call it AI, as far as artificial influence. So the language, consider what language is. Language is a program. Its purpose is to influence our mind and to control our action. So when they sound shift our language from its natural biological base, they move it to something that they can manipulate and control. And like I said, they change the sounds of the letters that we have to something very different. And most of the time, the stuff they change it to is a very negative sound. And the frequencies that comes out of our mouth have effects on our physical body and being. So that's one of the ways they use things to control us, by creating negative sounds, and for us to think that those negative sounds are actually positive. And so, like I said, that's who we are as far as that's one example of understanding of how the words that used to put together words, they actually have their own meaning, their own definitions, and they're actually telling a narrative. So like I said, names in the Bible, especially the Bible, doesn't function as proper nouns. They function as adjectives and verbs. They are telling a narrative about what took place in the past and how we could avoid things, and for us to learn or study what these words mean so we could get a better understanding of what we're reading as far as context is concerned. So I hope you guys enjoy that short presentation, and I'll talk to you guys soon.